This week on
BadgerPod NerdCast
with special guest
as we discuss all of the things. It's going to be awesome.
Be sure to tune in.
Rated PG-13.
Hello and welcome to BadgerPod NerdCast, number 11. And tonight we have on our show Sargon of Akkad. How you doing, Sargon?
Very well, thanks. How about you guys?
I think we're pretty good. We've also got Dr.
Yes, hello.
Yes, tell us about yourself, Mike, just a little bit so people can place the name while we speak.
I yell at strange people on YouTube, and I also do cartoons and music. And I've also appeared on the Patriarchy podcast with Mr. Goodfellow, Mr. Sargon of Akkad, for 5 hours of shitlord pain. It was beautiful.
We've also got, as always, Girl Writes What? Karen Strawn. Hello.
I'm here.
Yep. Yes. Good.
Yeah. No, I'm here. But you all know me. I'm that egotistical. I don't even feel like I need an introduction.
Yeah, she's a Scorpio. We've also got Crystal Garcia over there.
Crystal.
Yes. Sorry, the mute button. It's the bane of my existence.
You
Okay.
and the eternal fight with the mute button.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, we got a petition going on for the human rights of men and boys being represented in the UN. You can find that on Honey Badger Radio Facebook and the Facebook group. I also write 100 Days of Advice on How to Treat Men Right on the Return of Femininity, and I admin the page Loving and Celebrating Men, which I'm writing the book right now.
Awesome. We've also got Alison Tieman.
Hi. I used to host the Honey Badger Radio show. I guess I created it with Karen and Hannah way back when, almost like more than a year ago. So it was like ancient, archaic times. And personally, I'm throwing all my weight around. I just betrayed my inner self there. I apologize. Let me hide that. I am currently doing most of my work on my baby. It's called Xenospora. It's a dramatic long-form web comic that explores men's issues, and you can find it at xenospora.com. So, fun.
Awesome. And as always, I am your host, Rachel Edwards, and you can find my blog and my musings and whatever craziness happens to come to me on my blog at naughtynerdist.tumblr.com. Probably one of the few reasons to ever go to Tumblr.
Yeah, very few.
Yeah, and that's without ego, because people
keep telling me. I think everybody listening to this knows exactly what you're talking about, Rachel, and they understand.
Yes.
There are very few reasons to go to Tumblr, and your blog is one of them.
Although we should plug a couple of Tumblrs that are actually fairly decent. One is Permutation of Ninjas, and the other is Sir, You Are Being Mocked.
Yep, yes, those are great ones.
They're actually pretty good. But most of Tumblr is just a wasteland of whining and complaining and other kin and things like that. So yeah, I would suggest that other than the few sites on there, just stay away. Just unless you're just wanting to give yourself a reason to stab yourself in the head with a toasting fork.
It's like a Berlin torture garden in a particular metaphor, if you catch my drift.
Just make a long list of Tumblr blogs that are actually worth it, that are, men's rights related or just, somewhat decent, because...
Not idiotic.
Yeah, there's actually some really nice, well thought out blogs, and I'm subscribed to them.
Or alternatively are purely idiot fun and don't pretend to be anything more than what they are.
Yeah. So
Sargon.
Sargon, yes. Are you live?
I am.
Cool. I was wondering if you had a Tumblr.
No, I don't have a Tumblr.
What? I'm disappointed.
Wait. Karen, you don't have a Tumblr, do you?
No, that's because I'm lazy. But obviously, given Sargon of Akkad's video output and the level of research that he's put into this whole Gamergate thing and the DiGRA thing, obviously he is not lazy, so he has no excuse.
I'm too lazy to blog about myself.
Oh,
I just can't be bothered.
Don't Tumblr shame him.
I don't think that's lazy. I think that's actually you're just not fully yourself. Okay. You know, is maybe you're just like you're riding that ragged edge between being confident and being like a solipsistic piece of crap. So kudos.
Whoa.
No, beautiful.
I had no idea I was almost
You share
solipsistic.
your opinion because you think your opinion is worth something, right? That it's worth hearing, right? So you have to have confidence to do that. But then when you get into like a lot of what Tumblr is, it's a lot of that is solipsism and narcissism and all of this other stuff that just goes way beyond that. So like being sort of right at that point in the middle where you're not the one, but you're confident enough to share your opinion, I think that's really awesome. So
I think the facts speak for themselves. That's the thing. All you need to do is present what's happened, and people can see the conclusion you've come to and usually agree with it because you know I tried to come to the conclusion the facts support.
well, I think we all try to do that. It's just that some people don't like certain facts, and so they just don't consider them facts.
Yeah, I think that is true. That is definitely true.
You know, I mean, like I was just in a conversation today or the other day with a feminist on some video interview that I did. And she was like, well, you said a lot of things in your benevolent sexism video about Afghan women that really offended me and a lot of feminists. And I'm like, how is that even an argument? Right?
What?
Like, it's basically saying the philosopher says this is the truth, and your counter argument is the truth is mean.
Oh my God.
Right? And I don't like it, therefore it's not true.
Oh my God.
Like,
So much stupid.
it's ridiculous. I mean, like this is what the whole I'm offended thing or that's offensive thing does, is it basically boils down the counter argument to, you know, the sky is blue. Well, I'm offended that you said that isn't blue. Or the doctor,
Actually, I
you
think
have stage
it
4
really
cancer.
boils down
It
to
hurts
the
my
counter
feelings
argument.
to say that. It's not true.
I think it boils the counter argument down to this is my fist, and it's going into your face. I think it's just emotional violence, basically.
It is. It's ridiculous. It's you are not allowed to state a fact or tell the truth or you know, expose a statistic or, you know, analyze anything because some people might get all hurty over it. And I think that so much of the resistance to anti-feminism, like so much of the feminist argument just boils down to that offends me, right? That shouldn't be true because if it was true, it would offend people. Right. And therefore it's not true because reasons. Right. So.
Yeah. And you could go on and on and on about the complete lack of logic. But there's a word that I barely understand that I'm just going to throw out there and I'll let Rachel run with it.
Yeah.
Is it DiGRA? DiGRA?
Yeah. I
DiGRA?
think I'm not really sure, but it is an acronym. It is
Digital Genre Research, Digital Game Research Association.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's it.
And from what we understand about this, it was originally supposed to be a group of academics who did research about games and gaming phenomena and, you know, all of those things. But over the years...
how video games affect society, how video games reflect society, those kinds of things, right?
Yes.
I'm sure that would be the basic point of it, just like criticism of movies and criticism of any kind of cultural text, right?
I think that they go a bit further than that. They're concerned with new ways of doing things, or they were concerned with new ways of doing things. Like, you know, just sort of interaction with games. What, you know, sort of like Oculus Rift or something would have been something they should be very excited about. But, yeah, they got ideologically co-opted because They ran their executive board on a democratic system, and the feminazis voted themselves power.
Oh, this is it's amazing, because this is what happened with Erin Pizzey, right? Erin Pizzey started the shelter movement in 1971, and she ran her shelter until 1981 or 82, I believe, and ran the charity. And she was protested everywhere she went by feminists, right? But then enough of them joined membership in her charity that there were enough of them that that they could vote her out, and they took it over.
And so that's their modus operandi, because they care so much about what they're doing that they will organize in groups to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
Terrifying.
it's a consistent pattern with them. They take over something that they feel will advance their agenda, and then they turn it into some sort of carrier for their ideology. It's like
the ends
almost like a
justifying the
virus.
means, and that somehow being right all of a sudden. Ends more important than means, and we don't need to even describe the means anymore because our ends are right.
Well, it's not just DiGRA either. I mean, we've been seeing this pop up everywhere. We really have been seeing this show up all the time, and it's just right now, feminist ideology, it just sort of, when it goes into a space, into a community of people, it sort of just takes over. The people just sort of take over and then push everybody that's sensible out of power until they have control. And it's just
or even anyone who just has any contrary opinion.
It's it's sort of a weird phenomena, and I don't know, it's quite fascinating if it wasn't, or it would be if it wasn't so terrifying.
Somebody described the atheist, and this is what I think is maybe gonna be what brings it all to a stop, right? Because Erin was operating an actual charity, right? And there was actual money involved, and it was not a free market. There was private donations, but there was also government funding and all of those things, right? But when you have something that is an entirely free market, and you see this in atheism and skepticism, it's an entirely market-driven thing. Same with gaming, entirely market-driven, and what the people are interested in and what they want. When you look at what has happened with Atheism Plus, somebody, I forget who it was, described it as, having the Atheism Plus forums have turned into basically a staging ground for just 100 moderators to bitch at each other, right? Because there's no members anymore, right? Because everybody who has ever said anything bad to any moderator or ever offended anybody has been booted out. Right? So all that's left is moderators moderating each other. Yeah, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, I think when it comes to something like gaming, something like atheism and skepticism, some, things like this that don't have, that they're a little bit counterculture already, right? They are not being funded by the government. They're not, so it's a lot harder to get inroads into those things and take them over than it would be with, say, academia or politics or the domestic violence industry or whatever, right?
I think what I would add to that, I would say that I think the gaming industry is fulfilling a particular need that I don't see women really having, which is this feeling of having a sense of accomplishment and deriving a sense of value through your actions. I see that as something that men have a need for much more than women. So until we get to the point where we start shaming women for just being women, the way we do for men, I don't really see women ever engaging in games to the same degree as men. And because of that, the entire market will be dominated by what men want in games.
Well, and as long as the market is what is men, then men should dominate what the market dictates.
Well, yeah, obviously. So it's going to be a very, but the reality is that I think feminism was about selling stuff to women and creating a particular, I guess, psychological scaffold for selling stuff. And it just doesn't work with men. It just is not the right framework to sell stuff to men. I guess to some degree it could be, but if you sell the whole idea of being this white knight protector of women, but yeah. So Sargon, you've gotten quiet. Do you have anything to add to that before? Any thoughts?
No, I think you guys pretty much covered all my opinions on that.
Well,
Yeah.
when did you get involved with Gamergate? At what point did you say, okay, I need to start looking into this stuff. I need to start wading through all of this data.
I'm actually producing a video game, and the ideological direction the press had been taking was very disturbing, especially when doing research for my video game. I came across various statistics that showed the breakdown of the genders of the players of certain kinds of video games, based on industry data that was highly glossed over in the ESA report. And the data is very, very clear. Strategy, first-person shooters, aggressive games are mainly played by men. And games like Candy Crush and Farmville are mainly played by women. In fact, Candy Crush and Farmville are played by so many 35 and older women, 35-year-old and older women, that it means that if you were to conflate all the statistics together, then almost half of people playing what can be broadly described as games are female. And the press, the social justice press, have obviously leapt on this figure to just proclaim that half of gamers are women, even though the people playing Candy Crush and Farmville will never identify as a gamer, because gamer is someone who plays more aggressive, and I don't know, it's a loose definition, but they are the people who would not describe themselves as gamers, and practically everyone in the other categories would. And so they were using this misrepresentation of statistics, an intellectually dishonest misrepresentation of statistics, to then go after big publishers and big producers of games, declaring, oh, well, half of women are gamers, so if you don't have women in your games, you are evil misogynists. But I had this information for about, I don't know, a few weeks, I suppose, and I was holding off on doing a video on it because I didn't want to piss off the entire social justice press. But then Internet Aristocrat did his video on Zoe Quinn, his very first one. And I thought, well, now seems to be the time. So I made the video. And that's where it began.
Yeah.
I actually have a bit, just a point. I think it's not just the number of people who casually play games, but the number of people who are willing to invest large sums of money, and not just the games, but also the gaming rigs. That's heavily dominated by men. You know.
Yeah, it is. It just seems to be their field of interest, really.
Yeah, and
what separates it from so many other things like employment and academia and all of these other things that are highly institutional, highly structural, and that have a hierarchy with somebody at the top who's making decisions from the top down. It's a bottom up thing. It's like I said, it's market driven. And on top of that, it's not like it's your job, right? Like when you're working at a corporation and they make you take sensitivity training, right? And they basically pound it into your head that you have to behave a certain way around the women in the office or on the job site, right? You really have to do that, because if you don't, there goes your job, right? This is not like games to the people who are in control, who are in ultimate control of where games are going, right? Which would be the people willing to pay for games and the people willing to put huge amounts of money into games, right? None of that is a gamer's job. It's his hobby. He does it because he loves it. He does it because he enjoys it. Once it stops, once there are no more games that he enjoys, he's just going to stop playing. Right? And it's not going to be like quitting a job and he's not going to be able to make his rent, right? Or being fired from a job. He's just going to stop playing and find something else to do, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's so much less room for there to be sort of edicts from the top down as to how you men are going to behave this way. You men are going to be told what you're going to like and how you're going to do things and how things are going to be, right? There is so much less power coming from the top down to dictate to the men who are driving the whole industry, right?
The rules have already been set down within the parameters of a computerized system, and that's what they can't handle. There's a little box here that operates by someone else's rules.
Yeah,
and they can't get inside that box and change the rules.
This is the thing, right? Like, they had to give away Depression Quest, right? They had to give it away to get anybody to, and like probably 90% of the people that downloaded it and played it were just like, oh, there's this big controversy and this big scandal. I'm curious. I'm going to look at it.
See if it's really as bad as they all say.
Yeah, it wasn't to buy it because anybody thought it was awesome. I think that there were probably some social justice warriors within the gaming community who were like, this is really awesome. Let's play this. Let's buy it or let's download it. But you know, like, I don't think that game could possibly survive, even in a woman's market, even in the same market that Candy Crush and Farmville and Computer Solitaire exist in. I don't think that game would have made any money.
I think
I can't imagine. It's hardly a game at all. It's more like a choose-your-own-adventure novel.
Well, but choose-your-own-adventure novels can be fun, but a choose-your-own-adventure novel about being depressed?
Yeah, but they weren't written by social justice warriors.
Oh.
4chan made a better game. They made, like, Katawa Shoujo. And I don't think that they really had a budget for that. I'm not really sure if they did. But they did this, I think, mostly for fun. And it was a dating sim, like, you know, bare bones. I mean, they had somebody who was decent do the art and stuff like that. And if for those of you who don't know, it's a dating sim, but the thing about it that makes it unique is that all of the girls have handicaps of some kind or another, you know, whether they're blind or missing limbs or something like that. Even that's more interesting and well written. that's more well written probably than Zoe Quinn's thing, where, you know, suddenly you can't do things if because you're depressed and stuff like that.
I've got to say, I played Depression Quest, and I actually found the mechanic of knowing what the right thing to do, but it being crossed out so you couldn't choose it, to be quite effective. It was very frustrating, and I'm sure that's what she was trying to convey. But the thing is, I never got any information, or I never had any idea why it was crossed out, why she couldn't choose these things. I just had no idea why. It was never explained. There was no hint of it or anything like that. I mean, in itself, it's not a bad mechanic. I actually was quite impressed, but I mean, it's not very well written either. It's actually quite mediocre.
She didn't get it across that actually most of those situations where there's the good option is crossed out, that's self-sabotage. That's the friend of mine described it as the sort of the mindset of being terminally unique, right? Where you just, anybody suggests something that would actually improve your situation, and you can immediately find like 10 reasons why you couldn't. Oh, I can't because, oh, I can't because, right? It's self-sabotage, right?
Yeah, I imagine it is. But she never gave any sort of indication that was the case.
Yeah, no, because that would make depressed people feel bad about themselves.
Well, I mean, the thing is that, you know, there is issues with mental illness and not wanting to stigmatize it, but the other hand is most people who are mentally ill don't really want to stay in that position. So why didn't? Well, I know this functions as criticism, you know, make your own game, but why didn't she create Depression Quest getting out of depression? Or is that it? Or am I missing something? Is that actually the purpose of Depression Quest?
I don't think it's to make you depressed.
If you chose all the right ones, you got to the point where you were smiling at your mom across the breakfast table or something and feeling like maybe tomorrow might be less shitty than yesterday.
Yeah, but did it actually explore some of the mental changes that have to come about before you stop self-sabotaging yourself? Because if it isn't getting across the idea that it is you that is sabotaging yourself, how can it really, you know, explore learning not to do that?
I don't know.
All right, yeah.
I didn't. Sorry.
Let's get back to other things.
Yeah, let's get. I'm starting to feel
living with
depressed.
depression and coping with depression are two very different things. Some people
Yes,
try to cope,
yes,
some
they
people just try
are.
to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the very title depression quest. I'm like, what? You mean like every day of my life? Okay. But that's a little dark, I know. But yeah. Huh?
I'm on a quest to be depressed.
Yeah,
It's making depressed just
I
talking
mean,
about it.
I kind of wish they would give me a sword or something, because that would make me feel a little more.
That would make it
do
all
have a
better.
sword. Actually, no, I do have a sword in the corner. Okay, well, I guess I'll just go burst out and have an adventure and hope to not get arrested. But
You're self-sabotaging there, Rachel. I mean, you could have just taken that. Actually, no, that's a legitimate point. Don't do that.
yeah, don't go out with my katana. Just okay. So anyway, moving back to DiGRA and the research, and what are some of the interesting things that you did find but you haven't mentioned yet that you wouldn't mind sharing?
Oh, he
The
wants to
most-
save them all for his next video.
No, it's not that. It's more about making sure I'm not saying things that I can't be sure of, because it's a lot of research. It's all a lot of it seems quite nebulous as well until you find the information that directly connects them all. But there is absolutely an influence from DiGRA on the gaming press, and this is what some people seem to be thinking is tenuous. But no, I will be producing a video about that shortly. To show everyone exactly how, because it's very clear. It's just that nobody's really read what they wrote.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, what are the angles that DiGRA is taking in terms of game criticism? If we can explore that a little bit more.
Wow. Go on.
They're not really. They're trying to manipulate the direction of the conversation rather than doing any criticism of their own. You've got some really prominent, I say prominent, but prominent in DiGRA, feminists, feminist ideologues, academic ideologues, who are basically professional students and political activists masquerading as professors. And they are very concerned about pushing feminism in games. That they directly state it in their articles and papers.
Okay, and
Yeah.
did they have any particular game plan for doing this, or are they just want people
manipulate
to
press.
so that essentially do they have any like we want this kind of feminism in games, we want, I don't know, a feminist character to jump out of a bush and scream feminism at the
No.
Much more high level than that. They want to control the direction of conversation and the social punishment for not following that direction.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was brushing up on before the show was the video you did about that meeting of some of the DiGRA members discussing about how they felt peer review was troublesome. And well, there was more to it than that, but that was the thing that really stuck out to me. They really found that peer review was, they don't want to deal with it.
It's a big bother, having people check your facts and shit. It's like a huge fucking problem.
This is something that Jenny, what's her name, said in your argument with her. I mean, I know everyone talks of her baiting you to the point of saying something, but you, at one point, accidentally, you can't even call it baiting, but got her to say, and I quote, "Yeah, my tutors have done that. It's a thing academics do. Peer review can be really irritating."
Yeah.
End quote.
They're really bothered by peer review because I've read, if you can go on the DiGRA forums, they're such idiots. They post all this on their forums because no one reads it, because they are probably the most boring people to have ever walked the earth. And they say things like, I'm constantly having to justify my existence in academia to my peers. And I'm just there, well, they're not your peers. They're your fucking superiors. They're a complete waste of space, and they're just there to drive their ideology forward.
But what I was getting at with my question is, what do they want to see in games? How do they want their feminist ideology to manifest within games? Not just gaming communities, but I guess the ultimate idea is that they want this in a game being consumed by gamers, right?
No, they want it in all games being consumed by gamers. They want it so that you wouldn't dare conceive of making a game that just had men in it, let alone straight men, let alone straight white men.
Oh my God! It's basically like, and I'm outing myself as a closet Ramsey Paul viewer.
Oh, I like Ramsey Paul. He's funny.
I do too. I don't agree with him on like probably about half of what he says. I think half of what he says is kind of a little pie in the sky and not workable. Not workable. But I love his videos on feminism, and he did one on the World of Warcraft killer. This is the game that's going to destroy World of Warcraft. And it was teenage transgendered lesbians from outer space or something. And it was actually a game that got a $100,000 grant from the federal government. And it was essentially sort of an HTML program that was mostly text, and it was about some transgendered black transgendered lesbian from outer space coming to Earth to try to end misogyny, because misogyny on Earth was causing eating disorders everywhere in the universe or something like that. It was just bizarre. It was causing women to like self-hate all through the cosmos, right? Even on Alpha, right? And it was called Her Adventure or something like that. Anyhow, I just
wow,
that's what they want? Is that what they want? And this is a woman, like he linked to a TED talk by her about how she said that her objects talk to her, right? So the paperweight on her desk has things to say to her about culture, right? And just it's so much woo woo. It's like I felt like I was in that banquet room with Eve Ensler on the stage again when she said, "Deep down in my heart, in my soul, in my vagina, I know."
Oh God.
Okay, I just want to put a pin in something here.
This is kind of where.
How was this? What was the logic behind saying that this would kill World of Warcraft?
No, it's Ramsey Paul was just being sarcastic. He's like, "This is the game. This is the awesome game that's going to kill World of Warcraft," right?
Wow, that's
okay. No, I actually thought that some social justice warriors got it in their head that all right, they aren't quite that deluded.
The problem with all this is that when we think about the demographic that these people are trying to target with these kinds of games where, it's very, social justice-y, they've got all, everybody's represented, but it's all very much a novelty. I mean, the people they're trying to target are very casual gamers. This is probably not going to make a lot of money. It's probably the worst possible thing that they could do in general for games. I mean, it's like the worst thing you could do business wise, because the hardcore gamers are the ones who continue to buy games. They buy different games, they buy often, whereas the casual gamer, they're just casual. And if you're getting something like, Gone Home, where's the replayability in all that? You want something that you want to be able to come back to and play again, like Minecraft. And I remember Sargon was saying on his video that he could tell straight away, looking at that is something that's going to be so addictive that it just eats away at your life. And he's right. That stuff is like crack. The first few months you start playing that game, it disappears like that. Suddenly you realize that you've been reduced to just nothing, and you haven't bathed in like 2 days, and you're just
you're peeing in a Coke.
No, okay, not that bad. Not that bad. You do go to the bathroom, but next thing you know, you're like, I'm just gonna play for a few hours. You get on at like 11, and then next thing you know, it's 4 a.m. It's that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
But that has replayability, unlike some of these games that they're trying to propose. I mean, what kind of replay value does a Depression Quest really have?
It wouldn't even appeal to casual gamers.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think they're more interested in puzzle games and those sort of I guess farm strategy games.
I'm curious.
Facebook games.
Yeah, I'm curious to know how you feel, Sargon, about the 4chan exodus, and if you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about, and I'm as shocked as anyone else that the founder of 4chan flipped to social justice. It's like they've got some sort of brainwashing factory somewhere.
Oh man!
I mean, they did the XO Fest actually, which I think Moot attended, if I recall correctly.
He did. He was in the audience at Anita Sarkeesian's talk, and one of the things, like, because I watched what he did, I saw what he did, basically saying, no, this is how it's going to be on 4chan. We're not going to discuss this, and I was like, okay, if you were thinking that, you know, you were going to sell the website in 6 months, yeah, those dreams are gone, because you're going to get all of $10 from it, because all of these people who are on your website have the ability to make a website just like yours, right? You know, not all of them, but many of them have the ability to make another website just like yours, right? And make it to the principles that you originally made your website, which is everybody is anonymous and everybody can say whatever the fuck they want.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm sorry to do this, guys. I'm just going to have to step out for 2 seconds. I'll be back in a very, very short period of time. Sorry about this.
All right. One of the things that I've been looking into, and I'll probably have to brief Sargon when we get back to it, is I have been looking into the background, and that's how I ended up, you know, at what I'm calling 6 degrees of Jonathan McIntosh. One of the things that has been coming up is people are saying, well, if you want to know what's really going on, if you want to get an idea of how deep this goes, you need to take a look at the people that Jonathan McIntosh is connected with. And you do, and you're within probably under 4 steps between Anita Sarkeesian and Christopher Poole. And guess what? They're buddies now. There are chat logs where he was talking with mods, and somebody screenshotted, you know, a good long screenshot of of everything. And one of the things he said is he met her at the XOXO show, and now they're buddies, and they know each other via social network and communicate on a regular basis. And he communicated to the mods that basically they're doing everything that they can to shut this down, because there are people that he knows that don't approve of it, and he doesn't approve of it. And so basically there's screenshots of him communicating to the mods that he wants them to delete pretty much everything related to it, and pretty much wants it to die, and maybe is to the point where he is hoping to sell 4chan. So
yeah,
it's
but he's not gonna be able to sell 4chan for shit now, because
he's not.
What it is.
He's chased off all the value.
And here's the thing to think about in all this. The mindset that he has, especially looking at his blog, is that he has become disenfranchised with social media and things like that, and he's, you know, become distant. He says he's actively trying to change himself and his life and all this other stuff. And it reads very much like a hipster kind of blog, where he talks about nature and nature is great. Okay, that's fine.
He's just written their first check to the Church of Scientology.
Yeah, but I mean, what we're talking about here is somebody who got involved with the creative professional marketplace with a bunch of different people that are social justice warriors, and that's what happens when you have that creative business aspect, when you have those kinds of people that have that kind of mind. And you think about New York City, and you think about the companies that are located there. You have Gawker Media, you've got BuzzFeed, you've got the people who funded Moot. It was like Anderson Horowitz, and they gave him a good amount of money. I think it was to do Canvas, and then there was another company that helped him get funded to do DrawQuest. So you have him actively involved with these kinds of creative business professionals, all, the young professional hipster, like, I'm hip now, I don't have to be the professionals my parents were. Those kinds of people. And they all travel within the same circles. It's very much like people have been talking about with the indie game scene in San Francisco. And that's really what we're seeing. And there's a crossover there at the XOXO show. So,
San Francisco as a whole, it's an absolute hive of social justice. Everything I've been researching seems to trace back to there.
Yeah.
The place is just
yeah, but there's what I'm trying to say is
a wretched hive of scum and villainy, perhaps.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get across
is the whole west coast of that continent seems to be just a whole long hive that almost deserves to be thrown into the sea in a massive earthquake.
Well, I think somewhere at the north it sort of turns less hivey.
All I have to say is Bill Burr survived how long in frickin' Philly and Boston and on the East Coast, right?
Yeah.
He's getting married, and then he moves to LA, and what does he do? He gets married.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But,
Bill Burr.
Yeah. One of the things I'm trying to get across, though, is you see these exact same kinds of people also in these sort of social circles in parts of New York City. That's what you're really seeing. And it's the people with Gawker and Jezebel and, all of it's a very distinct social circle that you start to see when you start to follow their connections. And there is an overlap between the social justice folks in San Francisco and in New York. Those seem to be the ones that keep popping up as New York City or San Francisco. But that's just my piece.
I actually have something about, because I recently talked to, I went to a convention and I recently talked to an individual. I won't name any names, but he sort of a little bit runs with the social justice crowds, I guess, or is at least amenable to their ideas. And he sees Gamergate as like between two factions, and each one supposedly has a decent part to their side. And this is what he said, not what I say. And he said that he was for diversity in games, but he understood the concept of not wanting to have game journalism engage in this kind of corruption and collusion. And I'd in another this will all come together at the end. But another point is a couple of years ago, I was at this old feminist blog. I don't know if anybody remembers it. No, seriously, what about the men's?
Yes.
And sorry, you remember it, Karen?
Ozymandias and Noah Brand.
Yeah, and I remember Noah was really fascinated by a concept I put forth that said the reason why people use the typical white, brunette, straight male as the main character is because they don't have baggage. You don't. There's nothing stopping a person from just stepping into their skin and sort of wearing them like a exoskeleton.
Yeah, they're cardboard cutout.
Yeah, they're basically a cardboard cutout. We don't think that they have any. We don't think that men, white, straight, and for whatever reason, brunette men have an internal life to speak of, so they can just sort of excavate them out like a warm papaya.
No one's going to complain, basically.
No one's going to complain. No one's going to say. No one's going to say, "Well, you're admitting this issue that men have," and nobody's going to say that. Nobody's going to care.
Placeholder. The character is a placeholder for the player, just like in romance fiction. So often, the heroine is the placeholder for the reader.
Yeah, and she's completely bland. And in order to actually bring diversity into that field, you have to address that fact. Because once you start trying to bring in those other characters, then the game designers or whatever, the media producers are going to introduce all kinds of more arguments and more moralizing about they're doing it wrong. If they do X, it's wrong. If they do Y, it's wrong. If they do Z, it's wrong. If they do X, Y, and Z, it's wrong. Because there's so much baggage attached to these particular features, race and gender.
This all goes back to race fail, right? Like race fail, the huge kerfuffle in the science fiction and fantasy community, like 5-6 years ago, right? It ended, the huge controversy ended with the kind of contradictory conclusions that, number one, white authors have an obligation to write characters of color, and two, white authors have no right to write characters of color.
Yeah. It's like you can never win. But I'm curious about Sargon's opinion about bringing diversity into games, and if it is even possible or even worthwhile.
Well, you end up with beige squares, I think.
Yeah.
Add layer upon layer to that, and you end up with only beige squares are allowed in games.
I think that it depends on the game. I mean, if you're writing a modern war simulator from a West End nation, then it's entirely possible that your protagonists and their friends will be white,
or black,
and it's entirely possible that they won't be female. But if you want to write a game about whoever doing whatever, then do it. Just don't complain if people don't do that. You've got no right.
One of the interesting things, like just as far as I'm concerned, just coming from the sort of realm of romantic and erotic fiction, is that there are a whole bunch. There's an extremely vocal, possibly majority community of readers out there who don't want dynamic, strong female characters. They don't like them. They don't, they want the heroine if they're reading heterosexual erotica or romance, right? They want the heroine. They want that heroine to be a placeholder, somebody that they can sort of step into and imagine themselves as. Any other women in the story, right? Who are dynamic and strong and all of those things, right? They're not liked by the reader, right? Like the reader doesn't really like them, the female reader, right? They're not interested in them. They're interested in men. Straight women are interested in reading about men, and they're interested in reading about how they think that men think and feel and all of that.
Well, they're interested in flawed characters, and they're not allowed to do flawed female characters anymore.
Well, no, it's not that they're not allowed to do flawed female characters. I think that most female readers don't want to see flawed female characters, because then that makes them feel they relate to the flaws, and they don't like that, right? But they do like to see flawed male characters, because a flawed male character is just primed for redeeming, right? And oh my goodness, here I am, in the place, and I'm going to redeem this flawed male character, and he's going to become the perfect male character because of me, right? Male and female reading tastes are, men like a flawed male character because they relate to that male character, right? They relate to the fact that he's flawed, and they relate to the fact that, maybe there's a chance for redemption if he can do it.
Alternatively, they relate to the fact that a flaw introduces the possibility of taking action to improve that flaw.
Yes.
So it's putting that focus back on defining yourself as someone who takes action.
There's a chance that you can redeem yourself, right? And so men are attracted to these characters, right? Women are attracted to flawed male characters in the erotic sense, in the sense that, he'll change. When he falls for me, he'll change, right? And he'll become perfect, right? And it'll be just because I have the magic hoo-ha. And the magic hoo-ha is like actually a term that was used widely like 5, 6, 7 years ago in the erotica community. The magic hoo-ha that turns that flawed male character into a perfect male character, right? He's flawed with all the other women, but it's your magic hoo-ha that makes the perfect hero, right? So I just, part of me wonders whether media in all of its forms is an exercise in men building character and in women feeding their narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just, this, like, why else would you demand? Why else would you demand? As
Okay, I gotta say something to that. How do you make a game that encapsulates that for women?
The same way that you make a romance novel that encapsulates that.
Yeah, but they don't do anything. How would you play a female character in a romance novel? All they just, what, you would be like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah,
it'd be a lot like
any
Depression
actions.
Quest, wouldn't it?
You wouldn't have any. You couldn't take any actions. You wouldn't need a joystick. You'd just be sort of the sack of potatoes, just
but
idly floating through the world.
Women don't want that. That's why they play Flappy Birds and Tetris and Computer Solitaire and Farmville. That's why they don't play those games.
Because if you actually made a female character, she'd have to essentially be a sack of potatoes being carried around by a man.
Guys,
these Lara Croft games are mostly played by men.
I guess it's the sack of potatoes effect. Like, you just couldn't you could not get the attention of these women unless the female character was completely and utterly inert. And how do you play a character like that?
You play it like you play Farmville, right?
No, but if you actually had a female character, you couldn't do anything with her. Because
God games. This is why God games are so popular with women. There's a harebrained hypothesis to
oh,
throw out.
wow. Well, I do have a question for Sargon, though. I mean, getting back on topic. Well, we are on topic, but we've gone onto a tangent, and Sargon has barely said anything. So, one of the things that I was wondering, one of the things I wanted to ask, or I would have asked if I had been able to talk to you before this, was, during the last stream that you had, and Jenny Goodchild was on there, and she did ask a question. Well, she did ask the question. I think overall what she was trying to say or trying to ask, but in a very convoluted way, was, I think, ideally, what would you like to happen at the end of Gamergate? Like, no barriers in place. Ideally, what would you like to see happen, knowing everything that we know now and the stuff that we don't yet know that we may know in a week from now? What would you ideally want to happen?
I'd like to see the free market take its toll on the social justice press and gaming and their gaming industry, because it's not the same industry as everyone else's. And they've practically flounced out of the gaming community by declaring they're not gamers and gamers are dead. So I say leave them to their delusions. Let them have their trust fund kiddies financing Doom without guns and Myst without puzzles. Let them have it, but leave everyone else alone. Just they can go and have their space, and I'm more than happy for them to have their space. But I just want them to leave everyone else to play Call of Duty and Modern Warfare and all those sort of games in peace.
The problem is, though, with social justice warriors, the flounce never sticks.
Of course it doesn't.
It never sticks.
Yeah.
They're always...
One of the things is, in all this is, that is something to think about. But knowing what we now know about DiGRA and everything like that, I'm, at least the thing that gets me is, I would like to see legitimate academics that are a little bit more unbiased, because I, at least in my mind, the people who should be doing scientific studies, or ideally, as scientific as you can get with the social sciences, that's a whole nother topic in itself, but ideally, to me, you're supposed to be unbiased, and the scientific method is supposed to remove whatever biases might be present, as much as possible. But even though it is kind of nearly impossible to do any of these studies that involve, human beings and the mind and everything like that, it's incredibly difficult on its own. But to have people that already have an agenda making these decisions, it's, it's disturbing. I would really like there to be some kind of reform or attention drawn to this kind of bias that's so pervasive. It really is seeping into everything. I mean, one of the things that we've been consistently covering on the show is just how it continues to enter into all the creative spaces, into the sciences, everything. And it really is, taking us backwards, or it could be. I mean, I see it happening, that it is doing harm, and it's, like I said, it's disturbing.
Well,
I agree.
I would add to that. I mean, think about it. There's a branch of study that's entirely involved in proving that men's desire for women hurts them. And and these people are the same, or of the same ilk, that are trying to go into games and study them. And you're right. There should be neutrality. There's no neutrality there. They have an agenda. And they have a. Sorry, go ahead, Karen.
They hate peer review. Right? Like that's.
If I had any criticism of the peer review at all, it would be that I think it needs to be stricter.
Yes.
Especially within the social sciences, not looser guidelines. I mean, Jesus. It's
my concern with that is that the more feminist ideologues get into the academic sphere, the more they're called upon to do peer review for some other feminist ideologue. It may well be double-blind, but if the people you're sending your papers to are also feminist ideologues, then they're just going to agree with everything you say. They're not going to do proper fact-checking.
And so if we had stricter peer review at the start, right, then maybe those feminist ideologues would have been kept out. But they're not now. They're in there. They're entrenched. They have tenure. Yeah.
They're
right?
peer reviewing each other's papers.
Maybe peer review should involve some sort of incorporate something like not everybody has the same ideological bent on the jury.
The important thing is that you replicate when you are doing a scientific study. The whole part of at least I think so, of the peer review process is you are seeing if you can replicate this study. Can you duplicate these results? And if you can't, either you did it wrong or they fucked up.
Well, one of the hilarious things I find about feminist science, so-called feminist science, is how often they have this hypothesis, that the feminist hypothesis in the end, in the conclusion, well, we didn't prove it right. We found completely opposite results, but this never translates into actually questioning feminist hypothesis.
Yeah. No, what gets me is like, so you have the porn trains men to rape hypothesis that Andrea Dworkin came up with, right? And you have the expectation that if you're going to prove causation, you should at least prove correlation. And from the point that porn became more accessible than ever, it went out of XXX theaters and into people's VCRs, right? From that moment onward, rape went down by upwards of 80 to 90% in the US, right? The more access to porn, the less rape there has been, and yet people still believe it. Feminists still believe that porn trains men to rape, even though rape has decreased by 80 to 90% since porn became widely accessible, right? So they haven't even proved correlation, let alone causation, but feminists still believe in the causation, right? You have the same thing with it's just like with everything, with the more free and egalitarian a society is, the more similar choices men and women are going to make regarding careers, right? So what would you expect from that? Well, China would have less gender segregation in the workforce than Sweden, because Sweden is much more egalitarian and free than China. No, in China, 50% of engineers are women. In Sweden, 7% of engineers are women, right? You have a much wider spread when people are free to make choices, the choices that they want, because economically they can afford to, right? And politically they can afford to, right? So gender differences get bigger as societies become more equal and more prosperous, right? So the more feminist society is, the bigger the segregation you're going to have in the workforce, right? In careers. And, so it's the opposite of their prediction. What has happened? They would have predicted 30 years ago, Sweden would be like a utopia of egalitarianism and, 50% everywhere representation, right? No, the opposite has happened. Things have just gotten more split, right? And yet people still cling to the idea that gender is a social construct, that it's only the way we raise our kids, right? It's only the limits and restrictions that we put on women that make them want to go into nursing rather than engineering. And it's only the values we place on our boys that make them, we bought our boys Legos and not our girls, and therefore our boys grow up to be engineers. No, it's ridiculous. Every single hypothesis they have seems to, if you make the prediction, right, seems to produce the opposite of their prediction.
Absolutely.
It's consistent. It's consistent, and it really makes you wonder if they aren't capable of correcting themselves. How do they ever expect to affect the change they want to see? Let's not even go into whether they should even be doing it in the first place. But they can never actually do it.
The change they want to see is like it is like the change that communism wanted to see in Stalinist Russia, where every farmer starts out with an equal parcel of land and an equal amount of resources, and every single farmer will produce an equal amount, and if one farmer outproduces his neighbors, he's fucking off to the gulag, right? And when he goes off to the gulag, all of his neighbors starve because he was the one feeding his neighbors, right? That's the problem with these kinds of utopian, here's the goal. The goal is absolute equality, right? And therefore, any means are justified.
Law of unintended consequences.
Oh, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. And when you have something that goes so far against human nature, right? Communism is, in my opinion, communism is not compatible with human nature. We are not there. We can't do it, right?
Yeah, but that's really off topic. That's really
right.
Yeah. Okay. But let's get back on topic.
Before we enter a communism rant or an anti-Marxist rant, because I can feel one brewing.
No. But you have, with feminism, you have to take into account male and female nature, and that when you remove restraints on men and women, they will actually behave more like men and more like women. And
I'm going to take issue with that. I'm going to take issue with that because I think that what's happening, I don't think the West is actually removing restraints on men. It's still holding them to a standard of serving other people besides themselves. Whereas in China and in the Middle East and in all of those more so-called patriarchal cultures, they still hold women to that standard of serving people other than themselves.
Yes.
So you see this, that these girls are being told, no, you go into engineering, or if you are interested in art, you go into design, not fine arts, and because they're expected to get a job and support their families, just like we expect men in the West. So what's happened in the West is we freed women to do whatever the heck they want, and they do stuff that they find personally fulfilling. It may be that all human beings would find it personally fulfilling to some extent to take the same path, but we don't afford men that path. We still keep them to the same, you serve others. And so that's what I would say may be happening there. And we don't know because we haven't tested that hypothesis.
I agree.
So Sargon, tell me about the cyber mob.
Yes. Tell us about that.
We were talking about this the other day.
Speak freely.
You said
I'd like to, but I'm currently suffering from PTSD, so.
Oh my!
It was just exactly as you'd expect. Jenny Goodchild's cronies, but it only went on for about 15 minutes. It was the least impressive cyber mob I've ever seen. But I shouldn't expect anything more.
But the only reason it was the least impressive is because I'm sure that you let them know right from the outset that you wouldn't be bothered by it. And the moment that you let them know that, then they lose their steam. right? I mean, this is really the thing that I think so many feminists and so many women fall into the trap, right? Is that once you let somebody know that they're bothering you, then they just keep doing it. I mean, like my fucking kids, right? One of them's poking the other, like, okay, it's not bothering you, he'll get bored and go away. Right? But if you act like it's bothering you, he's just going to keep doing it.
It did actually stop after I just said, I'm not going to be bothered by this. So,
yes. Yeah. No, it's like with me, right? I just basically let everybody know that, you can't hurt my life. There's no way you can hurt my life. You can't even get me fired from my job. My boss will just laugh at you, right? If you phone. Everybody knows what I do, right? Everybody in my life knows what I do. And you know what? Go ahead and send me horrible messages. I get like maybe 2 messages a month that are like, you're hot, sit on my face, bitch. Whatever. Like, okay. Are you coming over now? Like, do you want to arrange a time? What? Right? Like, it does not bother me. It really doesn't.
That's the point where they chicken out and they're like, no, actually, I gotta go wash my hair.
Yeah. Like I've had rape threats. I had one person who was commenting a lot on my channel who started to make comments that seemed menacing, just in sort of the way they were wording them cryptically and all of that. And I was just like, okay, you know what? You're done, because I don't have time and the energy to deal with you. Goodbye. Right? I think I've blocked like 5 people.
So Sargon, do you have any comments of note from this?
Yeah. I want to hear some of the things.
Yeah, we want to. Was there anything
Who,
particularly the cyber mobbing thing?
We want to hear some of the things that they were saying to you.
They were saying, "Oh, you lost the debate," and I said, "Yes, I know." And they were saying, "Well, why won't you admit you lost the debate?" And I said, "Well, I am admitting that I lost the quote-unquote debate. I can't stop a pigeon from shitting over a chessboard."
No, you can't.
Yeah.
No.
And I commend you for being as civil as you were. I mean, you held it together, and she was really out of line. I kept thinking, I'm like, oh man, I wish I was there. Oh, the things I would say.
I should have known better, but everyone makes mistakes.
Everybody. And what's important is that you own up to them, because so often that's the thing that the SJWs won't do. They will, if they fuck up, they do not own up to it. If
That's because their whole personalities are based on being morally justified. And
exactly.
if for some reason they're not morally justified, then I think that everything about them kind of starts to unravel.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
They're extremely invested in the worldview, right? Like, this is the thing, right? This is why they maintain their echo chambers.
It justifies absolutely everything about them. And if they ever apologize for one thing, then suddenly they'll realize that they've hurt someone else, and the ends actually don't justify the means.
Yeah.
And so they're going to start looking back at all the other terrible things they've done to other people, and the terrible ways they've treated people, and suddenly they're going to realize what phenomenally bad people they actually are in the name of attempting to be universally good people, which is absurd. I think Ramsey Paul actually had a great point when he said that Republicans don't really like groups, but they're very polite to individuals, whereas the left are very, very fond of groups, but they hate individuals. And I think that's a very accurate statement. And I think that's probably why I prefer conservatives to liberals these days. I'm starting to find myself really loathing the far left a lot more than I've ever loathed the far right. The far right are just buffoons. The far left are the sort of people who probably end up marching you into a death camp.
Yeah, no, I actually have my issues with the far right, but the only people who have ever really been interested in what I have to say are people on the far right, and a lot of what I have to say is completely new to them, and they're very, very interested, and a lot of them are just like I never really thought of that. But now that you mention it, yeah, some woman did grab my fucking testicles on the dance floor when I was like 17. And yeah, if I was a woman, that would be considered sexual assault.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, I find it amazing how, and the irony is, I may be the most liberal here. I don't know, but I find it amazing how much liberals supposedly love humans while hating every single one of them.
Yeah.
You know,
I thought
amazing.
I was the one that was the most liberal here.
Oh shit! It's good. God, you're throwing down the gauntlet, are you?
No,
I'm
no. I thought I'm more of.
I will liberate myself all over every one of you.
I'm more. I don't know if I would. See, here's the thing. Every time I try to say that I'm neutral, I find that maybe I'm just not on the board at all. I don't know where I fall. I mean, usually they have these different tests, and usually it'll say like how libertarian or democratic or a Republican you are, and usually it's a little bit of each on different issues, but it's it's really just what makes sense to me. And there's always that pressure to choose, and I just find these people at the extremes to be insane. It's that they're not satisfied with just letting you be different or having a different opinion. It's you either have their opinion or they don't like you, or will go so far as to
Yeah, I don't pick a political party. My main interest is human rights, and whatever political section is working on that, then I'll vote for or whatever, support that. But otherwise, I really don't care. I don't care about political parties. My focus is human. Like, go team human. What do humans need? And
exactly.
It gets muddled in the discussion of political parties because they often just turn into filleting each other, because it's like different teams, and the whole point is that we're all supposed to be supporting each other. So I don't know.
And that's why I'm so glad that Gamergate does not have a political position. And I know that those on the anti-Gamergate side keep trying to make it political.
The men's human rights movement doesn't either. I mean, it's everybody from different political backgrounds and etc. So
the thing about
it depends to what degree you consider the free market to be right-wing or centrist,
I'm saying they keep trying to portray the Gamergate crowd as being politically conservative, rich white men, when a lot of them are, they're just liberal. They're also rich white men, but they're rich white men as well, calling gay or trans black people sexists and bigots and all this other stuff. It's crazy. And one of the most positive things, or I don't know, it could be negative, that came out of Gamergate is now people are seeing these folks as they really are. You really get a taste of the animosity and the aggression coming from these folks. These folks are not healthy. They are not kind individuals, at least not to us. And I don't know. I think it's good. I think it's healthy that all of this is just kind of getting aired.
Quick point to they're not kind individuals, and the person who I won't name any names, who was more of a liberal social justice warrior leaning person, said that they were more afraid of other social justice warriors than they were of us.
Oh yeah,
so I'll let that out. And then
there's tons of reason to be terrified of them. Right now, one of the things that has been going around, and at least it has been confirmed somewhat, at least in the moot chat logs, that are up on Encyclopedia Dramatica, if you want to see them, or any of these other archives, is that there is indeed a feminist or social justice hacking group that is going out there and is responsible for things like the DDoS and the hacking and the doxing and everything. There is a legitimate group with this in mind that are going around and bullying people, or trying to bully people in silence.
It's entirely staffed by men as well.
Mm.
Sorry, go ahead, Sargon. I didn't quite catch that.
I bet it's entirely staffed by men, because that sort of thing's tough.
Oh, yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? Like, when you look at shit Reddit says on Reddit, something like 3/4 of their users are men, right? And they are the they're the Tumblr of Reddit, right? They're the Tumblr feminists of Reddit. They are and this is one of the things that drives me crazy about men, especially like as far as, you know, being involved in this movement and the whole bit, is how men lack a sense of brotherhood, and it's not necessarily their fault, right? Because at least the last 2 generations of men, about, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to 50% of them are children of divorce, right? Who were raised primarily by their mothers and rarely saw their fathers, and all of this, and did not have a male teacher in primary school, did not have a male role model in their preschool years, right? So, I mean, like, you can sort of understand why that is, but that doesn't mean it's healthy. And it's really, you know, as much as I hate some of the ritualistic coming of age, sort of passing, you know, just sort of going from one stage to another, you know, from boyhood to adulthood, those rituals that almost every culture has had for males. Some cultures have had those for females as well, but most cultures have something like that for men, where you go through some sort of something, ceremony, ritual, whatever, and then you are a man, right? As much as I hate the barbarity of a lot of those traditional ceremonies and those traditional rituals, at least they propel you into a mode of manhood that is defined by men, right? And this is really what has upset me so much about feminism, about Gamergate, about, you know, the whole thing in atheism, everything, all of it is that you have this contingent of men, just like in Shit Reddit says, the majority are men, right? And they are there to be human shields for the women folk, right? And it doesn't matter if the women folk are right. It doesn't matter if the women folk are just. It doesn't matter if the women folk are being absolutely the most heinous cunts on the face of the earth. They deserve protection. And if you want to be a good man, you're going to protect them.
Yeah. It's like they're the pawns in all of these threat narratives.
We've lost our Sargon.
Yeah, but Crystal has been waiting very patiently, and she doesn't talk much now.
Role models.
Yeah,
Crystal.
just to speak real quick on what Karen said, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And it comes to show just how entitled women feel to men. They feel entitled to men completely and entirely. And yes, they absolutely have created division within the Brotherhood of Men in a very big way. And, you know, men gathering together and creating whatever, you know, supporting each other has been stomped down on with men, by women. But okay, so what I was going to say real quick was I've noticed that when I start to have the discussion with people about men's human rights, the very odd thing is they only acknowledge white men as men. Because when I say men's human rights, they're like, oh, those oppressors, which I'm not saying white men are oppressors, dear God, that's not what I'm saying. But that's how they view it. They're like, oh my God, oppressive cis white male, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, first of all, who said just white men? We just said men. You're the one segregating. You're the one that's saying only white men are men. Nobody said that. We said men. And your bigotry against white men is showing. So I don't understand why people think that's acceptable. Like the hashtag white culture. Anyway, blaming. Yeah. So it's just a very bigoted approach to the men's human rights movement that they have going on, that SUW has pushed, that feminists pushed. And the odd thing about that is they're only acknowledging one group of men as men. They're pretty much saying no other men exist but white men, and we don't like them. So it's like in two different ways they're being completely insulting. They're saying only white men are men, and they're bigotry against white men. It's very peculiar. It really is, and I've seen feminists do this from across the rainbow, who do this, It's very weird. It's very weird to me. I don't understand. I don't get it. I really don't. That's all I had to say. I'm very confused by this weird, bigoted perception. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a really funny, and I totally agree. And I actually argued a social justice warrior into that position. I said that men had experienced lynching throughout history. Oh, excellent! You're back, Sargon.
Yes.
Just in time for me to talk about lynching. And I said to the social justice warrior that men had experienced lynching throughout history, and he said black people had experienced lynching throughout history, and
God!
And I said, are black men not men?
Exactly.
And it was like it seemed to blow his mind. It's like, whoa, I hadn't actually thought of that.
Oh my God!
Oh, you're right.
Wow.
Actually, men have. But the funny thing is that there was a significant portion of white men who were lynched as well. Like this was something that equally happened, usually to marginal men, white men like Italian or Irish or poor, or
those who supported black men.
Yeah,
like
but there was
who wanted to be who there were a lot of white men who actually went undercover on the KKK to disrupt them, and they were destroyed when that was found out.
Yeah, and isn't that another funny thing, is that white men in the history of opposing racism have taken on compared to white women, have taken on the more dangerous role in opposing racism.
Yeah, what the KKK did to spies was not pretty. So,
yeah.
All right,
yeah.
10 minutes left, guys. We gotta make our we're gonna need to start making our final points. Anything you want to talk about, Sargon? I mean, you can talk about anything. We can talk about Emma Watson bonus round.
I don't think it's worth wasting any time on Emma Watson.
All right. Anything you want. Anything.
Nothing jumps out at me off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
All right.
I want to know how you got into, like, what made you start your YouTube channel? That's what I want to know.
That's a good question.
My conscience.
Your conscience? What the fuck what does that even mean? Okay.
No, it's a good question. It really appears that the world is on a dramatic downward spiral into oblivion, and I honestly couldn't not do anything, and I can't really do much, but I can definitely rant and rave into a microphone. And I was hoping that people would listen, because I think I know better than maybe a lot of the idiots I see on TV or in politics. And I want people to know that these people are idiots, almost to a man or woman. Almost no one you see on TV has any fucking idea what they're talking about anything. It's disgusting.
What I think I could describe that as someone is wrong on the internet. And that's one of ironic, and it's like really horrible, because like my boyfriend's been through some really serious men's rights-y issues-y stuff, right? My sons, I have 2 sons and a daughter, and I worry about all of them, right? But part of what really keeps me going is just the realization that there are so many people who are completely out to lunch. And these are the people who are being given the podium, right? Like, someone is wrong on the internet, and that someone just got elected to, like, president of the United States.
And the cunt was elected president.
You know?
Yeah,
like,
there is no someone is wrong in the mass media. You can't do that. You just have to go to the internet and say, someone is wrong in the real world. Someone do something about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, Aaron, Kizzy, and I were saying, like, it's, both of us were just kind of expressing one day this sort of incredulity that so many people can be living under a collective delusion, and such a self-destructive one, right? It's such a dangerous one.
Emma Watson's speech before the UN to be... Is it Emma Watson? Yeah, it is Emma Watson. Yeah, that speech was just...
Yes.
possibly the apotheosis of idiocy. Strong, independent women need men to help them. Oh, who could have fucking predicted this?
Oh,
You know, if you just look at human history, that's exactly what's happened. And the retconning of history to claim that women have been oppressed by men since the dawn of time is just hurts my head. I can't believe people believe this bullshit. It really pisses me off.
Women have been oppressed by men since the dawn of history, but they're not inferior, and they're not. You know, that's not promoting victimhood.
I had
Yeah,
some.
that doesn't make them weak.
No, it doesn't make them weak.
I had some feminists today say, "Well, look at the things that men say. The quotes from men. You know, give me liberty or give me death, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and but women feel all those same things. They just don't choose death." Right? They just say, and I was like, so
Cake or death? I'll just take the cake.
So women say, give me liberty or nag you until you do, and you better not lay a finger on me or my brother will come kick your ass.
Yeah.
Women have always known that men care more about them than anything else. So anything they do really is, I mean, anything men do to women, they always couch it in the language of protecting women. Even in Saudi Arabia, they oppress women to keep women safe from their own base emotions and whatnot. They don't hate women. Men love women too much, which is really the reason that feminism has been allowed to do what it does.
Well, this is what I have said this before. I'll say it like 100 more times, 1,000 more times. Right? The biggest crime of feminism has been playing on men's instinctive protectiveness of women to convince men that they hate women.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
To find out that you've suddenly hated women all your life and you didn't know is quite a blow to the average man who considers himself a decent human being.
Huge. It's huge.
To talk about just to pull out that point about Saudi Arabia. I mean, in the Middle East, women suffer about a third the violent death of men. And the reality is the more targeted the death, the more control the person dealing the death has over choosing their victim, the less likely it's a woman. So suicide bombers, it's like 50-50 because they'd go to places where men and women usually congregate. Kidnapping, it starts to be more like 98% men. If snipers, you can choose and you actually see your target, it goes to like 95% men. And then torture victims is like 100% men. The more you can choose your target in the Middle East, the more likely they are to choose a man. And women, in that context, in a violent society, it makes a lot of sense to have a marker of your femininity that can be seen from a mile away, which is exactly what the abaya or the burqa does.
Yeah,
it's obvious.
What I found interesting is, like, if you look at the footage of the woman in the blue bra, right, and you look at what is actually going on in the background, because most people aren't looking at the background and the wider context. They're focused entirely on that one woman because they know that it's a woman, and so they zone in on it, and then that's all they see is this woman being beaten. Right? But the moment her garment falls open and the Egyptian police see that there's actually a woman under there, right? It's not a man in a burqa. It's actually a woman, right? One of the police officers pushes another one away just as he's about to, like, strike her again, right? And then they cover her back up immediately and they drag her off to safety. And the whole time this is going on, there's a guy who's getting his head just stomped on. About 10, 15 feet away, right? Just stomped on. And this caused a huge international uproar. And the women of Egypt finally left their homes to protest the oppressive Egyptian government. A peaceful protest that was not broken up by police, by the way, right? Okay. They went and they marched.
Sorry, Karen. We gotta wrap things up.
Yeah, we do. Karen, sorry, we gotta derail the Karen train.
Yeah.
Choo choo. We gotta derail it.
We want to thank everybody that was involved with the show today. We want to thank our guest, Sargon of Akkad. Loved having you on the show.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it was a pleasure having you.
Everybody involved, Alison and Dr. Randomercam and Karen and Crystal. Yeah, and James Huff, who's always in the background. And so thanks for coming around.
Before we leave, there is one last thing. One thing.
Okay.
Since you guys have kept with us so long, or to this point, our listeners, please consider keeping with us a bit further and helping us out. Our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. And I actually corrected it this time, so there isn't an extra R, so you can actually find it. Sorry for those of you who tried. And I don't know what to say. You ran afoul of my incredible dyslexia or my love of R's. Either one. Anyway.
I love ours too, don't worry.
I think everybody does, it's just, but yeah, so please consider helping us out. Promotional expenses, it helps us spread the word of evil and make sure that all people are touched by its corrupt noodly appendage.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want no heart to be unblackened.
We want
no arse either.
Patriarchy to become the norm.
No arse either, yeah. So give all your hearts and arses to us. Okay, anyway. Thank you, and I'll hand it back over to Rachel.
All right.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody. Have a nice night.